Hello students, our video today is on rounding numbers. The learning target you should have written down in your notes is I can round numbers to any given place value. So again, in your notes, you should have both the title and the learning target written down. Here's a reminder of the place value chart. You should have written this down in your notes from yesterday. If you did not, then write it down today, but it's going to be useful for today's video as well. So again, our decimal point is here. Everything after the decimal point ends in the THS. Everything in front of the decimal just ends in the S. So when it's asking you to round to a certain place value and you're looking at which place, if the word ends with the THS, you know we're talking about something after the decimal. Okay, so just again, here's the chart. If you want to write it down, and again you can, but if you didn't write it down yesterday, write it down today. Again, whenever you see this person here, this is something to think about. Our question that I want you to think about today is, why do we round numbers? Okay. If I had a number like this, and it just keeps going, why is it important to round those numbers? Or even if we had, and we were asked to round, why do we round numbers? Oops. Okay, we've got some steps here. Anytime you see steps, that tells us that's something that we should write down. So we should say steps for rounding numbers, and then write down these 3 steps. So pause the video, write them down, and then come back and continue watching. So step 1, find the place value you are rounding to and underline that digit. So if it was saying round to the nearest tens, you would find the digit in the tens place. Look to the right of the place you are rounding to. Okay, so you would look to the number after it. If it's 5 or more, you raise the score. If it's 4 or less, you let it rest. So raise the score means it rounds up one number. So if it was a 7, it would round up to an 8. Let it rest means it just stays the same. So if the number was a 3 and you were letting it rest, it would just stay a 3. Change all the digits to the right of the rounded number into zeros. So after, if we were again rounding to the tens place, we would round that number, and then everything after it turns to zeros. Okay, we've got examples here. So we're going to go through and do all of these together. So you could follow along on the first ones and just watch, or watch and write them down as I go through them, or you can try them on your own if you're already feeling comfortable. So the first 3 here, it says round the following numbers to the nearest tens place. Okay, again, tens, that S tells me that we're talking in front of the decimal, and I know in front of the decimal it goes ones and then tens. So I underline the tens place, which is this 1 here. Look to the number after it, which is a 6. 5 or more, raise the score, so the 1 rounds up to a 2. Everything after it turns to zeros. Now, these 3 zeros after the decimal are not necessary, so I could actually leave those off and just have 20. But the 1 in front of the decimal is important, because if I took that 0 off, then it would just be the number 2. But we need 20, so this equals 20. Next one, again, round to the nearest tens, so that's the first spot after the decimal. Look to the number after it. 5 or more, raise the score, so the 3 rounds up to a 4. Everything in front of the number stays the same, so the 2 would stay. Everything after turns to zeros. Again, the 3 zeros after the decimal, they don't change the value of the number. If I take them off, I still have 240. Okay. Sorry about that, 240. Okay, next one, 12 and 5/100ths, round to the nearest tens place. So that's a 1, look to the number after it, which is a 2. 4 or less, let it rest. So that means the 1 stays the same. Everything after it turns to zeros. And again, you don't need those ones after the decimal, so that would round to 10. The next 3, we are rounding to the ones place. Whenever you feel comfortable, try them on your own and then watch through and see if you got them correct. So the ones place, or the nearest whole number, that's the first spot in front of the decimal. So then we look to the number after it, which is in the tenths place. So it's a 9. So that would make 5 or more raise the score. So that means it would round up to a 3. Everything after it turns to zeros, but you wouldn't necessarily need those. So that would just be 3. Next one, again, ones place. Look to the number after it. Okay. The 9 would make the 5 round up to a 6. So that would become 46. But you wouldn't need the zeros, so that would just be 46. Okay, ones place on this one is a 0. Look to the number after it, 4 or less, let it rest, so that would just be 0. It doesn't round up, it doesn't round down, it just stays 0. Everything after would turn to zeros, but we don't need them. Okay. Next 3, round to the nearest tenths place. Tenths, that THS on here, tells me we're talking about the first spot after the decimal. So right here, look to the number after it. 4 or less, let it rest, so it doesn't round up at all, it just stays at 32 with all the zeros. Again, you don't need those after the decimal because it doesn't change the value of your answer at all. So this would just say 32. Okay, tenths place is the 3 on this one. Look to the 7. The 7 makes the 3 round up to a 4. Everything in front of the decimal stays the same, or in front of the place that you're rounding, sorry. Everything after it turns to zeros. So 10 and 4 tenths. Okay. Last one here, tenths place on this number would be the 3. Look to the number after it, 6. So 5 or more raise the score. So the 3 rounds up to a 4. 4 tenths. Now you do need the 0 in front of the decimal place because anytime we are just talking about a decimal answer, we need that 0 in front kind of as a placeholder. But then everything after would be zeros, so we don't need to include them. So our answer would be 4 tenths. Okay, some more that we're going to go through and try here. So when you feel comfortable, we'll do, just start trying them on your own. Hundredths place, again, THS tells me I'm after the decimal. I know after the decimal it goes tenths, hundredths, so that's the second spot after the decimal. So the 2 on this case, look to the number after it. 5 or more, raise the score, so that means the 2 would round up to a 3. Everything in front of it. Now in this case, we do need the zeros in front of that spot, because if we took them off, it would change the answer. But then everything after turns to zeros. Those you would not need, but you do need these 2 in front of the decimal. Otherwise, like I said, it's going to change your answer or give you a different number altogether. Okay. Hundredths on the next one is in the 2. Second spot after the decimal. Look to the next number. 4 or less, let it rest. So everything in front stays the same. The 2 doesn't round up or down. And then that would turn to a 0, but you don't need to include that 0. All right, next one, 12 and 999 thousandths. But we're looking at the hundredths place, which is this second spot after the decimal. Look to the one after. 5 or more raise the score, so that makes the 9 round up to a 10. So then it actually moves over and would make this 9 round up 1, which would be 10. So then it carries over and makes this round up. So this would actually round up to 13 in this case. Okay, so if it's already a 9 and it rounds up, then you move on to the place in front of it, and then that one would round up a number. Okay. All right. Next one's round to the nearest thousandths. Again, THS. We're talking about after the decimal. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. That's the third spot after the decimal. So in this case, the 8. Look to the number after it, which is a 2. 4 or less, let it rest. So everything in front of that place we're rounding stays the same. In this case, the 8 does not round up, so it stays like that. So our answer, 14 and 78 thousandths. Okay. Next one, again, third number after the decimal. look to the spot after it, which would be the 10,000th place. 5 or more, raise the score, so that would make the 9 round up again to a 10. And since it can't be a 10, it carries over and makes this 7 into an 8. So 3 and 28/100ths. Last one here, thousandths, third spot after the decimal. Look to the number after it. 4 or less, let it rest, so the 3 stays the same. 156 and 293 thousandths. Okay, again, you would fill in with zeros after it, but that 0 is not really necessary, so you could leave it off. But everything in front of where you're rounding stays the same. Okay, that's all we have for our rounding video, so you should look back at your notes. Notes should include the title, the learning target, steps in this case, and examples. If you're stuck, you can always go back and re-watch any part of the video. Check and see if you're having a good understanding of this. Is this something that you could explain to somebody else? You can always try more practice problems to continue to get better.